The snowstorm hadn't been predicted. At least not the kind that swallowed the horizon in white sheets, silenced the town's usual bustle, and made even the bravest truck drivers pull over. But on the outskirts of Crestwood Valley, inside a tiny roadside café called Sunrise Spoon, 26-year-old waitress Marina Holt stood barefoot on the cold tile floor, staring out at a world disappearing behind a curtain of roaring snow. Moments earlier, her boss had closed the café for the day, no customers, no power, and the storm was only getting worse. But before the lights flickered out completely, Marina saw them, a line of headlights approaching slowly, swerving, sliding, struggling. At first she thought it was a convoy gone off route. Only when the first vehicle, a massive luxury tour bus, skidded to a halt in front of the café did she realize something was terribly unusual. If you believe kindness and second chances can change lives, then please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Letters from the Heart. It truly motivates us to keep bringing emotional stories like this. Marina opened the door, letting in a blast of freezing wind that slapped her face. The bus door hissed open, and 15 men and women stepped out exhausted, shivering, and far too well dressed for a roadside diner. Their coats looked expensive, their scarves designer, but their eyes held the same fear anyone would feel when faced with a storm this violent. Marina didn't know who they were, but she knew one thing: no one deserved to be stranded outside in this kind of cold. She quickly ushered them inside, locking the door behind them to keep the storm out. The power died completely moments later, plunging the cafe into dimness lit only by emergency lights and a few solar lanterns the owner kept for emergencies. The group looked around anxiously as gusts of wind battered the walls. Marina hurried to the storage room, grabbed blankets, paper cups, and anything warm she could find. Even without electricity, she managed to light the old gas stove, heating pots of water to make simple tea. The group huddled close, grateful for warmth and shelter. They introduced themselves only by first names: Arden, Celestine, Rourke, Vivian, Thorne, Bram, and others, but none elaborated on who they really were. Marina didn't press. They were strangers in need, and she believed kindness shouldn't come with interrogation. For hours, she made sure they were comfortable, even giving away her own coat to the oldest man in the group who couldn't stop shivering. She walked around with a lantern, checking on each of them, keeping spirits up, telling stories, sharing snacks from the pantry. She had almost no money, lived in a rundown apartment, and had been saving every spare cent for her mother's medical bills. But generosity wasn't something she offered because she had extra, it was simply who she was. Outside, the storm raged until morning. When the sky finally softened into a pale, icy blue, the winds eased and the silence returned. The group thanked Marina, promising they would remember what she did, though she brushed it off with a shy smile. She had no idea that these weren't ordinary travelers. She watched them climb into their bus, waving as they slowly rolled away down the snow-packed road. Marina thought the story ended there. But it hadn't even begun. The next morning, sunlight poured over Crestwood Valley like the storm had never happened. Marina walked the short distance from her apartment to the cafe, expecting another quiet day. But halfway there, she froze. Her heart hammered in confusion. The road ahead was filled, completely filled, with cars. Not just any cars. Luxury cars. Supercars. Rare models she'd only ever seen in magazines, and there weren't just a few. There were dozens. And more were still arriving. Lamborghinis, Rolls-Royces, Ferraris, Bentleys, Maybachs, glittering in the sunlight like a moving fleet of wealth. The entire parking lot and roadside were lined with them, stretching all the way down the block. People were stepping out of them wearing tailored coats and polished shoes, holding cameras, papers, and gift bags. The cafe sign hung crookedly overhead, but every eye seemed fixed on the tiny place as if it were a monument. Then Marina recognized them, 15 familiar faces stepping out from the middle of the crowd. The same people she had sheltered during the storm. Only now, instead of being cold, tired travelers, they were surrounded by assistants, security, and cameras. The tallest of them, Rourke, stepped forward first. His voice carried effortlessly as he explained who they really were. They were billionaires, owners of global companies, founders of empires, heirs to massive fortunes. They had been traveling to a private winter summit retreat when their luxury bus lost GPS connection and veered onto the wrong highway. They would have frozen outside that night if Marina hadn't opened the door. Marina's knees weakened. She felt a rush of embarrassment. She'd given them paper cups for tea, blankets that smelled like old detergent, and her own coat that had a ripped sleeve. But they didn't mock or smile at her simplicity. Instead, their expressions were full of respect, admiration, and something deeper, gratitude. Rourke told her that after leaving the cafe, every one of them stayed awake thinking about what she had done. She didn't know them, didn't ask for anything, and had no idea they were rich. She simply acted out of kindness. And in a world where wealth often isolates people, her warmth had reminded them of something they'd nearly forgotten: humanity. One by one, the billionaires approached her with offers. But not the kind she expected. Celestine presented a document offering to buy the cafe for her, completely renovated, modernized, and turned into a community hub she could run however she wished. Bram offered to pay for her mother's surgery in full, no loans, no conditions. Thorne offered her a leadership position in his hospitality chain, training and placing her anywhere she wanted. Rourke handed her a thick envelope containing the deed to a 2-bedroom home he purchased in her name earlier that morning. And Vivian, the calmest among them, offered her something priceless: a personal scholarship to attend any culinary or business school she desired, at any level, fully funded. The entire crowd of wealthy onlookers, reporters, investors, corporate teams stood silently as Marina tried to breathe through the overwhelming generosity. She couldn't speak. Tears spilled down her face in quiet disbelief. For years she had struggled alone, scraped change out of coat pockets, worked double shifts, and gone without meals just so she could care for her mother. She had never once expected life to give back. But here it was. All at once. Still, something inside her trembled with hesitation. She wasn't used to taking anything from anyone. Her life had been about giving, surviving, pushing through. But when she thought of her mother, frail, coughing, trying to reassure her that things would someday get better, Marina realized that maybe this was that someday. As the billionaire convoy waited for her answer, Marina finally found the courage to speak. Her voice cracked as she explained that she hadn't helped them expecting anything. She had done it because kindness was the only currency she truly understood. She accepted their help not for luxury or comfort, but for her mother and her future. When the crowd applauded, she felt something warm and foreign: hope without fear. The next days changed everything for her. Construction teams arrived to renovate the cafe into a bright, modern, sunlit space with community tables, a reading corner, and a wall dedicated to acts of kindness. Her new house had warm lighting, new furniture, and a tiny garden her mother fell in love with instantly. Donations poured in from strangers around the world, inspired by her story. Interviews requested her presence, but she chose simplicity, telling the world she preferred quiet gratitude over fame. What mattered to her most wasn't the wealth, it was the reminder that doing good still meant something in a world that often felt cold. If this story touched your heart even a little, please make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Letters from the Heart. Your support helps these emotional stories reach more people. And now, a special request: comment "Kindness comes back" if you believe good deeds return in unexpected ways. Marina's cafe reopened 2 months later. The sunlight streamed through wide glass windows, illuminating new shelves, polished counters, and a mural of a rising sun behind the cafe's name. Her mother sat by the window, smiling at every visitor. The 15 billionaires attended the grand reopening, arriving not in flashy cars this time, but on foot, quietly taking their seats like regular townsfolk. They didn't treat her like a charity case, they treated her like family. And every morning after that, Marina stepped into her cafe with a renewed heart. She looked around at the busy tables, the laughter, the warmth, and realized something profound. She hadn't sheltered them during a snowstorm. She had sheltered herself from a lifetime of believing she was alone. In the end, the world didn't just return her kindness. It multiplied it.